Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, one more time. I know how sick of me you must be by now, because the feeling is mutual. No. Welcome to our last panel here. It's really great to see. It's fantastic to see so many of you here, and obviously rowdy and ready to rumble. If we can just take off honestly, thank you. There we are. So as you know, it's customary at the end of the Finished Vehicle Logistics North America conference for us to put together a panel of high-level, important, and significant speakers for you. Now, unfortunately, none of them were available this time, so we're going to... So no, actually, as you can see, this is a great panel we have that I'll be happy to introduce to you in a moment. You've heard from some of their colleagues, but this will be the first you'll be hearing from them today, I believe, or during this conference. As usual, we need to kind of go through a few things, and just as a last reminder, we're going to do the prize draw at the end of this Q&A session for the feedback. You have them on your desk. If you haven't filled them in yet, please do. And our staff will be going around and collecting them from you at some point during the session or towards the end. And again, we have the golf prize and some fudge from Britain, so there's plenty to play for there. And also, don't forget that it's kind of a new addition to the event this year. Usually we kind of close, but we have some equipment displays outside, and TEC Equipment has sponsored some drinks and some nibbles. This is at the parking lot, so when you go out of the conference area and then to the right, there's three different kinds of equipment: CTM, Conviezia Andrea, and TEC. We're doing some demonstrations. So join us over there. It's a chance to kind of see and feel some of the things we've been talking about over the last 2 days. And, we've covered a lot, I think, over the past couple of days here. We talked in the morning yesterday about the North American and the U.S. market. The news still positive, probably or possibly another record year this year. Although, as we heard, it's also possibly a peak. If not now, then soon. I think as Sarah Amico described it as we're in the year of the fat cow. Although I did think Louis took some offense to that. He thought that she was directing that comment to him each time. But we did clarify afterwards that actually it was that we should be thinking about the changes, thinking about potential downturn, or at least a time when our focus might not purely be on the volume, but it needs to be about improving efficiency. And as we talked about in many sessions, whether that's getting modes to interact better together, whether that's looking at yard designs, looking at port infrastructure, looking at optimization systems and IT, and other innovations, whether that's how Holloway companies, for example, might collaborate in combination with the OEMs, as Steve Tripp, an idea was presented yesterday, and indeed many others. We talked about off-site space and how complicated things like that can be. It might not sound so much when you say it, but securing capacity for another 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 vehicles with the right security, lighting, and all these conditions at short notice. This is important things to consider when space is constrained and the market is still growing, and capital investment might be difficult. So, there's all these things we need to kind of continue to work on together. Obviously, this morning we also talked a lot about Mexico, as we've said, probably for the past 5-6 years. I'm not sure you could go a single session at one of these conferences without talking about Mexico. And I think some of the amazing thing has been, usually we have these forecasts and they don't always live up to them, but if you kind of went back to the last 2 years, Mexico has probably exceeded many of those earlier forecasts. So it continues to be a massively important market and production source for many of the people in this room. So a lot of things to cover there. And it sort of takes us back to the theme of our conference, right? Invest, upgrade, innovate, or whilst the sun is shining in particular. So this is a time in the year of the fat cow to prepare. And so we have another chance to talk with what is actually some of the most senior and important people in vehicle logistics in North America. And that's why I'm very pleased to have on the stage with us Bryan Burkhardt, who's the Director of North American and Intercontinental Vehicle Logistics at General Motors. Marc, who's the Head of Worldwide Transportation at FCA, and also has inbound and outbound Mexico responsibilities. Glenn Clift, Chief Executive Officer for Glovis America, which is, of course, an important part of the Hyundai Motor Group. And Gerald Lee, Vice President of Vehicle Planning and Logistics for Subaru. And you get a 2-for-1 in this session with Louis and I, so we'll both be on stage. But even though both of us are here to ask questions, you guys have been really active this conference, actually much more active than, frankly, you normally have been, which has been great. It's made our jobs a little bit easier. So we're kind of hoping and expecting that to continue in this session. So we'll be turning to the audience quite often to get your perspectives as well. So I wanted to start on that kind of theme, invest, upgrade, and innovate, to just kind of ask generally for our panel, perhaps what part of their finished vehicle logistics supply chain they're most focusing on in terms of investment or innovation right now, or needs the most perhaps focus, whether it's because of some kind of shortages or inefficiencies or whatever the case might be. So if we can start with Bryan, and we can just kind of kick off our discussion on this note.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that we've looked at is basically where can we invest to actually have a good return on investment. So we've actually, at some of our plants, added rail infrastructure, and we're looking at our finished vehicle yard spaces to really say, where can we add space smartly to actually, save costs. So, we're not interested per se in investing in a port or something like that, but we're looking at our internal infrastructure and saying, where can we make investments and actually have a good return on investment? So, as I mentioned, like with the rail infrastructure at our Detroit Hamtramck plant, that one is actually a very good business case for us over the long term.
Yeah, it's the same for us at FCA. The difficulty for, I think, the OEM, certainly at FCA, is that our ability to get capital within our own organization is limited as we fight against the fact that we really spend all of our capital on designing, marketing, and assembling vehicles. That's where our investment goes. So when it comes to the supply chain, we have the opportunity to invest in our proximate yards, in our plant-related facilities, and we've been focusing that for the last, I want to say the last 2.5 years, certainly before I came back. If we look back a couple of years when we implemented rail in Brampton. So the focus in the last 1.5 years really has been using whatever capital opportunities that we have had to improve our facilities outside of our plants, improve the flows and throughputs, redesigning the areas that we have responsibility for. But in terms of external projects, we really rely on all of you. We rely on you and your businesses, be it rail, truck, port, to invest appropriately in your infrastructure to support the investments that we're making in our manufacturing and assembly operations, and support the growth that we've had over the last 3 years, which I think you've all successfully done. And now that we're in this steady state, or this expected steady state, invest in those things that don't overcomplicate the network and truly eliminate waste and provide opportunity for the next downturn challenge, which will eventually come. So.
Okay. Since the last time that I was up here, our business has changed quite a bit. We were in a cycle there for a while where every car coming off a vessel was sold, and the main goal we had and the main pressure we had was just to get the car delivered as quick as possible. Seems like overnight we've built some inventory now. So we're dealing with an inventory situation. We've got a new plant coming online in Mexico that's going to start actually shipping this evening. So we're dealing with a lot of changes in our network. And one of the challenges that we have that we're trying to handle is the investments we make and the changes we make to our network. We're trying to be flexible enough so that when we go back to those days where vehicles are being sold out of the factory door or off the ship, we haven't invested a lot of money in assets that sit there unutilized. So right now we're tempted to go out and get assets, parking lots, and other assets to handle the situation we're in today, but there's no indication that's going to last for a long time. So it's difficult for us to handle to be flexible and also handle the situation that we have today. So that's where we're at.
Chris, 1.5 years ago, we started working with Trans-Development to redo our motor pool operation out in Lafayette. So we are increasing our port processing out there as well as our warehouse. expanding our rail yard to 144 spots, and we moved our truck away from Boardwalk and Park Place to give them more room and operate much better than they had been under.
Just a quick follow-up on those, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but most of you have, at least 3 or 4 of you did mention some specific capital investments there, and I wondered if you can talk a little bit about the difficulties of obtaining that kind of capital for finished vehicle logistics. As like I said yesterday, especially with the confessions of a capital junkie and the perspectives that we hear from Yiakoumi, for example, it doesn't sound like the sort of area that they'd be very quick to want to throw money after, when they could rather be focused on platforms or technology or whatever it might be. So is that a battle, or rather has there been some improvement in terms of communicating those sort of business cases within your companies?
Yeah, at least from FCA's standpoint, we're the short tail on a long dog, right? And when you go into capital planning meetings every year and you've got plants and programs looking for 150 million, 400, big capital spend for long-term programs, and you go in with a $6 million budget to pave yards, you would think that it would be an easy, well, yeah, let's keep that going. But at the end of the day, the struggles that we have, and again, we manage through them, is that once the vehicles are produced, they're invoiced. And so for the majority of our organization, they look at it as being, it's a sold vehicle. And even though we own the infrastructure at that last end and we own the relationships with all of you after that, we do have a hard time competing for capital particularly when we're in an investment phase. You would think it would loosen up a little bit, but there's just so much more to invest in the product, and so much more to invest in the plant infrastructure that has such a bigger return on either the market or on our fixed costs that we're sometimes living hand to mouth. Now, it's not to say that we're not successful with good projects, but it really puts the onus on us to work with our partners, and certainly in the areas that we control from a physical plant standpoint, to have really strong and robust business cases. If business cases have good returns, the Brampton Rail was a good example. People took a run at that for 30 years trying to get rail built into Brampton, and I think we finally just hit on the right business case, the right time, with the right product in that plant that justified doing that. So we win more than we lose, but it's hand-to-hand combat every year, at least for us. So.
Yeah, I would say the same for us. But I think the key is, protect the customer and follow the money. And if you can put, the facts together to basically say, here's how it's going to be better for the customer, and here's how we can get a good return on investment, then, facts are friendly and they usually win. So that's what our group is really focused on, is just putting together that compelling business case. And it really is a tough sell to go to senior leadership and say, hey, we want to pave, more land, And but sometimes when you can show, hey, because of quality holds or whatever, just normal churn in the supply chain, we spend a lot more money going off site, diverting, et cetera. So, to me, it's again protecting the customer, following the money, and really putting together that compelling business case.
Going to use one of these things, I think. We talked about, using that same analogy, even though it brings tears to my eyes whenever I hear the word fat cow. Is there still any low-hanging fruit? Are there still opportunities for savings? We'd like to think you've been through some tough times, and we'd like to think we're really efficient. Is there still some low-hanging fruit? And how can we find it? What are people doing to make sure that we take advantage of anything that's still out there? Maybe Gerald?
Louis, if I knew of any low-hanging fruit, I wouldn't admit it. I think the real opportunity is still working with our IT group. I've got about 11 priority projects. I'll probably be lucky to get 3 of them done this year. And every one of those projects has potential benefit that will accrue to the dealers and our consumers. So, but it's just difficult, like Bryan and Marc were saying. It's you have to fight for everything from a facility standpoint as well as IT resources. Mm-hmm. That's where it is for us.
Yeah.
I think we should ask Steve Tripp. I find his presentation so interesting. He gets my thoughts going. This conference and the last conference I was at, he had two very interesting concepts, and I like how he presents them. Where he's, because a lot of times we have ideas, but we're almost afraid to express them because people in the room might be going, well, that's a crazy idea. Why would you? But they're really pretty simple ideas. But I think they do have some merit, and I do think that could be low-hanging fruit, that it's a matter of just people working together, and I know it's a collaboration thing that everybody talks about, but I think there's something there to it,
Yeah, I think there's low-hanging fruit. I've been saying it for a year. I think that as we get into this steady state, there's a lot of blocking and tackling that we can be doing better, So we've had some successes on dwell time and working through cycle times, and frankly we've benefited in the network from a variety of things, good weather, other commodities on a rail standpoint, freeing up some track capacity that allowed us to get some better velocity and stuff like that. But I'd like to still focus on the blocking and tackling of the things of pulling waste out that has grown into it as we grew over the last 3 or 4 years. Destination dwell time, the interaction between the manufacturers, the railroads, the distribution ramps, and the haulaway carriers. We're at a really interesting spot with technology that's coming together in terms of visibility and transparency. I've certainly seen, after a year back in the industry, the level of cooperation and collaboration among the OEMs and the transparency, really recognizing finished vehicle logistics as a shared asset as opposed to a competitive advantage. I think that holds all kinds of opportunities to identify other low-hanging fruit that may not have been available to us when we thought we were all designing our own network, right? So my caution to that is, there's a lot of provocative things that came up over the last 2 days, and I certainly am a futurist. I certainly do see the value in the things that we're going to, but what I would suggest is while we do have the time to make some of these changes, let's not overcomplicate the solutions. Let's stick to the blocking and tackling. Let's focus on the things that we do well together when we cooperate and have transparency, because I do think that's where we're going to really set ourselves up operationally when there is a bad winter next year or the year after, or there is a downturn, that we have a history of working in a common direction as opposed to for our own good in certain cases. So.
Yeah, I think Marc brought up a great example where we're working with the railroads, OEMs, and haulaway companies to really improve the communication. And I think that's where there's some low-hanging fruit, is actually, communicating better, collaborating to really allow everyone else to do a better job of planning. So I think we've got a meeting in 2 weeks in Atlanta to really have more discussion about, what information can I provide to the haulaway companies and the railroads in terms of what's going to be produced and coming out of our plants. How can the railroads communicate to the haulaway companies, here's what we're going to unload tomorrow. And, just through better communication, everyone can do a better job and the network can be more fluid. And, the beauty is it's not a I win, you lose, everybody can win. And so I would say, to me, the other part of low-hanging fruits is when you look at network design, there is so much change in our networks, almost on a daily basis, and each change presents opportunity. So we've purchased LlamaSoft, and that's our network design tool, and it makes it a lot faster for us to recognize opportunity and take advantage of it. So I would say, improve communication, and then looking at network design, that really is a gold mine.
To be fair, if I could see more low-hanging fruit, maybe I wouldn't be such a fat cow.
Might contribute.
Let that silence sit for a moment.
I think he was drinking at lunch.
Exactly. Before I ask another question, maybe I did promise we'd look to the audience sooner, or maybe a bit more this time than last time. So if anybody does have any questions or comments that they'd like to make, then Louis and I are not very polite people, so you can just also shout over us at any moment. Feel free to do that. But if not at the moment, just on the competitive advantage side, I totally understand what Marc means when he says it's vehicle logistics needn't be a competitive advantage. Maybe you're not going to buy a Chevy over a Ram because the haulaway truck for the for the Ram overtook the Chevy, right? I mean, it's not really the point.
That didn't happen.
I see Brian's not so happy about that analogy. But on that point, I mean, if you have a launch, say of those two trucks, for example, wouldn't getting your vehicles exactly where you want them to dealers in time, isn't that fairly strategic? And in fact, maybe you do need to think quite carefully and strategically about the vehicle logistics that you're planning in some of those instances, which might actually, be a competitive advantage in terms of getting them to the dealer on time and with that flow.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, if you look at the business model typically in North America, it's a build to stock, unlike Europe, which is build to order. So the, getting vehicles to dealers quickly is very important. But, I think the consistency, that even flow, and, that's really more important. So I think, to me, when you can basically take waste out of the system and everyone can win, that's probably more important than, the time aspect of it.
And frankly, for me, I don't think it's the network is that sensitive. If I had, we just launched the Pacifica, and we notified everybody, we notified everyone in the network, and it was coming and where it was going and where we needed priorities, and again, I mean, the carrier base and the supply base are the ones that really picked up the ball and delivered everything to our launch curve. In fact, we delivered better than our actual production launch curve. So that was thanks to everybody in this room. So I don't think the network, frankly, has a deep sensitivity if one of us at any point in time has a launch and there's 2,000 or 3,000 units that have to jump in. I think as an industry, certainly at FCA, but I've seen it when you look at the network measurements, is none of us are really holding a lot of big launch volumes anymore, or at least certainly not in the last year. And so we're all going to have buzz models. We're all going to have models that are important to our long-term sales success. But I think the network working collectively benefits me more than if I operated independently just to move my units to get them to the market quicker. So it's my personal philosophy, and I think that's how we try and work at the FCA. So
I agree. I think we operate the same way. When I first came in this industry, I felt like at certain meetings I would see where it seemed like the players at that time were trying to almost one up the other. They wouldn't use certain technology, just it seemed like because the other guy was using it. I saw some of that. I don't see that nowadays. I really don't see anyone trying to make everybody else do it their way or trying to hurt others. We definitely look at it as if we're all efficient, let the sales guys compete in the advertising space and the design space, and like you said, delivering a car one day sooner may not be what's going to really sell a lot of cars. So I just want to make sure that we're doing it the best we can and compete with the others in a different field.
Yeah. A couple of winters ago, I think we all realized we were in the same boat.
For some of the conferences, we look at bringing other industries in, and it's easy for the inbound side, bringing different types of Apple or whoever it is to talk about their supply chains. We had a conference recently in Atlanta where we brought Coca-Cola in, the head of the VP of supply chain for Coca-Cola, to talk about their supply chains. But how can you benchmark finished vehicle logistics? It's such a unique product. You can't compare it to small boxes of iPhones or whatever it is. Can you, and do you try to benchmark your vehicle logistics against other industries?
I think it's difficult against other. I think UPS learned that lesson in 2000 with Autogistics when the sales pitch was, we move all these boxes, and cars are just boxes in other conveyances. And I think they had quite a learning curve over the first 3 or 4 years in understanding that. I've been involved in a lot of supply chains. I've been involved in a lot of other industries, and just recently coming back in from consulting. And this is a really small community, and there's a reason for it. We've got captivity in this community. We've got captivity by scale. The number of units that we build a day out of every one of our plants, that scale can't be consumed by just any piece of conveyance. The specialized equipment, short of bills solution is a single-use type of equipment. So I find it difficult when people come in to benchmark us or to provide the level of expertise that sits in this room with more advice on how to do this better. It's kind of like when you have consultants coming in and say, well, we've got consultants who are going to show you how to do your finished vehicle logistics, and you spend the first 6 months teaching them finished vehicle logistics so that they can turn around and tell you how to do it better. I'm a real firm believer that the innovation and the understanding in our industry really sits in this room and sits in the offices that we sit in with the people that we work with and the people that we develop over time. I don't think there's anybody that can solve our problems better than us and the thing for me has been, it's been this for 20 years. I knew that if as an industry, if we could get to the point where the OEMs truly looked across the table and said, we agree it's a shared network, we agree that it's not a competitive advantage, and now let's start sharing information. 10 years ago, we didn't have the capabilities to share information quickly. Every day it makes it easier to share information today, and I think that I'm really encouraged by, again, my first year back to see how cooperative and collaborative everybody is in understanding that. And I think the more we push towards that, the more low-hanging fruit we're going to find. So.
And I would say we have started benchmarking internally with a few companies, so we've got that process started. And I think the key is how can you raise the game for the entire industry? And so that's what the focus is. I do think it's important to look at other industries to say what technology or what things do they utilize that we may be able to adapt. But direct comparison with other industries and benchmarking, that's a little more difficult.
Yeah, our office in Korea has tried that, and I just found that we ended up spending more time trying to justify and explain why the comparison is not valid with the other industries than learning anything from it, right? I mean, we've learned that we're different. So, we participate in some of the benchmarking within the industry. I think that's some very interesting information. But to go outside, I just haven't seen anything that really I thought was valid.
We measure ourselves against our ETA that we give to the dealer when we schedule the car. And we've managed to reduce some dwell time by changing the way we schedule, trying to be more active on a cluster basis than we had been previously. And we've seen some benefits from that. But overall, we don't give the dealer a week of, we give them a day of, and that's our commitment.
On that point, I suppose, what maybe other panelists can talk about their approach to ETA. Because Gerry, you and I have spoken in the past about Subaru, and I think I was pretty surprised that the accuracy was in the high 90s or in the 90s% in terms of that. And then there's obviously gets refined as you go, right? But to the other OEMs, do you give ETA by day or by week or not at all, or what's your approach?
Yeah, so for GM, we currently do not provide an ETA to our dealers. And like I said, there's not a lot of pressure on us to do that because 95% of what we actually ship is going to stock. Mm-hmm. So if the system like it is today, if the network's running smoothly, dealers have a really good idea of when they're actually going to get their vehicles. They know where the vehicles are coming from. They know the approximate time frame. Where you really have an issue is if you've got a sold order and there's an issue in the network, or if you're on quality hold, that's when there's a real need for an ETA. And so I like to say it like this: you have an issue, or it's an issue when you have an issue. And when a vehicle's on quality hold, you don't know when that vehicle is going to be repaired, and so it makes it pretty difficult. But it's something that we're looking at internally on. We want to provide an ETA. There's not a ton of pressure right now. We've got an experiment going on in Europe because it is more of a build-to-order model there. So we track the events in our system. We actually have the capability to provide an ETA. We just don't right now. So it's something that we're pursuing, but at this point in time, we don't provide.
We used to provide ETAs based on our transit standards, which to Bryan's point around quality holds, it made it very difficult when you did have holds to get back on track, and so you had a lot of bad information out there in a lot of cases on vehicles that were hot. But with the relationship with Rubicon, We've been able to systemize the ETAs, not only take the basis of our standards, but also overlay historical performance as volume flows through the variety of OD pairs. And we're at the point now where our ETA accuracy is around 82, 83% for within 3 days or within the prior week up to the ETA early. So, so the feedback we're getting, there hasn't been pressure internally for us either, but the feedback we certainly get from the dealer base and from the folks that look at it has been that they're happy with at least knowing within a window of 4 days when they should expect their vehicle. So, yeah.
So our system generates an ETA, but you know, I don't know how much it's utilized. I've never had comments from a dealer or from one of our customers that the ETA is not accurate and is causing us problems. I've never heard anyone say, hey, that ETA is really helpful, thanks for providing it. But we do have it, but the one thing that we have been pushing for, and I have heard good feedback, is delivery appointments. So that when a driver knows when he's going to be at a dealer, he can make an appointment ahead of time so that the dealership can make sure that they have the lot space cleared out to land those cars off the truck, make sure he's got a lot attendant there to receive the cars in, those types of issues. I have heard good feedback about that, but the actual ETA, I mean, I guess if you have cars that fanatics are waiting for, you know, a collector type car and he's anxious to get it, then he's, you know, that might be something very valuable, but you know, we are selling out of inventory also, and I think that makes it less important to the end consumer and the dealer.
We've been in a situation for since Cash for Clunkers in summer of 2009, where we are short on inventory. We've had more demand than supply. So our sold orders range from 10 to 20% of our sales in any given month over that period, and that has resulted in a lot of pressure. In fact, I don't know if you look at the NADA dealer attitude survey for the distribution, but I guarantee you my results are at the bottom, because every dealer is convinced that all of their cars arrive at the end of the month, even though we do a smooth flow.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the audience this time? And we have something in on the live feed. I don't know, we should maybe take that, or if you want to do that later.
Yeah, I think it's looking at the, going back to the theme about investing while the sun shines. What incentives do you have to those investing? Can you guarantee volumes? Can you guarantee or rate creases or long-term contracts and so on? We're hoping now that people are going to be investing in our industry. What can you do to help those invest when they're selling their plans to the bankers or whoever it is? How can you help them?
You mean outside of the contracts that we have and the 18 million SAR that we're dealing with?
Yes.
I don't know. What would you like?
If we ask them what they'd like, I think you'd get 100 answers.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, I mean, look, the pressure for us is we make our investment in the vehicles. Our duty to our customers is plan the vehicles, market the vehicles, make the vehicles. We don't have orders for every vehicle that we make. We anticipate, we forecast, we do it to the best of our ability, and we build to our build plan that given year. And my expectation, and I think this is what's happened, at least in the 20 years I've been in this industry, is that's what the rest of you do as well too. You take that information and you invest appropriately in your capital structures in order to compete amongst yourselves for the business that's available. That's your investment in this network. So I think the commercial mechanisms work very well for us to deliver every one of those cars every year. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I think overall the industry right now is very healthy, and I think the payoff is, the continued good work that everyone's doing. But I could be wrong.
I do think, where there's big investment required, we're definitely willing to look at the term length and extend that. So, I mean, from a commercial standpoint, I think we can accommodate that. So.
Can I call on Bill Schroeder from AHA, because as an independent, I suppose, rather than call on a specific logistics service provider, if we're asking people to invest now, is that the impression do you think your members feel that now is a good, safe time to invest, and that they believe they'll get the support from the car makers, reasonable support. You're not going to get great guarantees and things, but do you think that it's your members feel that it's safe to invest and they'll get the what they need to enable them to invest?
I think they're starting to feel some anxiety of investing for the next 3 years. I think they felt very, very comfortable over the last 2 or 3 years. And if you look at it, there's been a tremendous amount of growth of the carriers, and a tremendous investment in new equipment and replacement of old equipment. But what I'm seeing, and then when I talk to some of the truck distributors saying, how's it going? They say, well, we're seeing a little bit of tentativeness. And to that point, I don't think it's because of the OEMs or their customers. I think it's more of a macroeconomic anxiety than any specific contract. Although they might kill me because they'd say, why didn't you just say we need longer contracts? You fool. So, but that's my view of what's been happening. So. And by the way, Louis, thanks.
I thought, Bryan, you made an interesting point earlier about using systems, or Lamasoft in this instance, to re-optimize the network. And this is for everyone as well, how quickly can your networks respond to, let's say, another shock to the system? We're talking about forecasts that call for steady state, which maybe call for a relatively mild decline, but the winter could come and there could be another polar vortex. I don't know, there's plenty of risks in the global horizon that could shock us a bit more than any of that. Obviously, vehicle logistics is just one piece of the whole puzzle in terms of what plants would have to react. But how flexible and how reactable are your networks now to what could be a shock?
Well, first, we're not anticipating any big shock. We actually internally are characterizing it as a plateau versus a peak. So, we don't expect anything dramatic. But you've got contracts. Our networks are more like turning a ship versus being able to switch on a dime. So it takes some time, but over time you can do it. But I think the good thing is, having capacity is a good thing. And where we really get in trouble is when we don't have the capacity and we can't react and we can't take care of the customer. So the fact that there is good capacity in the network right now kind of softens that.
And I think from our standpoint, we've also invested in Lamasoft to a small degree, and using it certainly in outbound. Traditionally, we would look at optimizing our network in a bigger scale when we had big sourcing windows. They tended to revolve around rail sourcing contracts or large trucking contracts, regional contracts, that type of thing. And that's when we took the opportunity 3 or 4 times a year to look at how we would change the network for the better. I think the tools that are available to us now allow us to work collectively with the carrier base to maybe do that every 4 or 6 weeks in certain pockets, in certain areas. And I think the value, we've been doing it obviously with our contracted carriers, and the flexibility we've seen out of our carrier base to find joint opportunities to improve areas that they're working in. We've actually even had carriers, to Steve's conceptual point, trade off lanes and volumes because what made sense 6 months ago for them, when we put them together with another carrier, it kind of made sense to do something different, and it worked out forever. That was a win-win-win, right? So the idea of having the tools and better visibility to how our network's performing, I think, just allows us to increase the frequency of analysis. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean it changes, but it certainly uncovers some great opportunities if you know what to look for. So.
I think similar to Marc, most of our studies recently have been the result of a plant opening or a major contract coming up for bid. So we'd study it because of that. We haven't done a full network analysis in several years. We've seen that we've had issues where our logistics network is related to the sales network for our customers. And to make a change to the distribution network sometimes requires a district being moved to another sales region or a sales region boundary being redrawn. And those are pretty big issues within the sales organization. So it's not easy for us to constantly be trying to say, okay, let's take this group of dealers. They were served out of Brunswick. We now want to serve them out of Texas. Those small little fine-tuning things are not that simple for us. It does take some effort. So we do it, but just not as often as I'd like to see us do it. So.
We've been fairly stable over the past year.
Also, the fuel prices, I think the fuel prices should have triggered us to do a study because our fuel surcharges may not necessarily be the same between a trucker and a railroad. It could change modes of transportation in some cases, but we haven't even looked at that, just haven't had the time.
I remember in your presentation last year, Glenn, I think it's quite interesting, you showed quite a high truck radius, if I'm not mistaken, out of Georgia and Alabama. And interestingly now, the New Mexico plant sounds like it'll have quite a lot of trucking too because of the rail issue right now. Is that an issue has the low fuel price mitigated that, or are you kind of looking at some ways that you might put more on rail? Or?
Well, I think we would like to put more on rail in general. The fuel price hasn't triggered us to look at it. And the factory coming online in Mexico has not really changed our average length of haul either, because we are going to use short sea coming up into the port operations on the East Coast. And those units are going to truck the same distance as the current vehicles from Korea. And vehicles pretty much west of the Mississippi are going to come up from Canada or from Mexico on rail and go into local railheads. So the fuel has not generated a study there.
We've talked a bit about technology, and one of the piece of technology that's on pretty well on every car now, the GM version I think is OnStar. How can you use that to help you with your logistics? We heard a case study from Jaguar Land Rover in Europe about coincidental successes where they had their telematics system and they found a way of supporting logistics. So are you able to use the OnStar technology or whatever your equivalent is to help your logistics?
Yeah, I would say with OnStar, we've actually utilized it today for a couple things. For example, if we're block parked and we've got say we're on quality hold and we've got to retrofit some vehicles, we've actually, to locate the vehicle, flash the lights, honk the horn to locate that vehicle in the middle of the pond, so to speak. We've also utilized it for missing vehicles. So every once in a while, a vehicle will get stolen, and so we've utilized it for that. But I really think long-term, the telematics can really be leveraged for network visibility on that vehicle and vehicle tracking and ETAs. So I think that's where the future is going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, our Uconnect platform, we've been working with them in our engineering group to identify things specifically logistics related, that when the technology is available in a broader number of our fleet. So I think we're probably 40% of our fleet is telematics enabled, where we can get that connectivity. So we're working internally to identify the 3 or 4 things that we think are going to be critical to be ready for, that when that fleet's available, we'll be able to do those types of things in terms of tire pressure, battery, lat long, location activity. So, and I think that's just scratching the surface, frankly. So.
Yeah, I think it'd be great when we were able to use it for yard management, finding vehicles. So currently, not all of our vehicles are equipped with this technology, so it makes it difficult to use it for an application like that. We have used it for missing vehicles. We were able to use BlueLink to, it's almost like a LoJack type device where they can pick up where the vehicle is and find it. But the vehicles that are in our inventory, the system has not been activated yet. I think it has to do with a charge. They start paying for that service. Right. So there's been reluctance to do that. And I think for us to convince the manufacturing arm to do that, we'd have to convince them of some type of a payback. So I'd have to be able to assure them that I could use it for yard management and have savings there. But until it's on every vehicle, I'm still gonna have to scan vehicles and locate them, so we haven't done that yet.
Yeah, our cars are activated and tested at the ports or at the factory, and I look forward to the cars being able to tell us when they're within a quarter mile of the dealership. So and they'll be pinging us that they've arrived.
Then you can draft them.
and we draft.
Again, just if there's any voices, it's more like tumbleweed at the moment, but yesterday we had a presentation from Serva that showed a robot, a kind of automated, let's say an AGV for finished vehicles, and regardless of whether it's that technology or something else, how much space do you leave for an idea that might not have any application yet, right? Maybe it's something for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, a kind of like innovation room or whatever you'd kind of want to think about it. I mean, it seems like this is an industry that's a lot more day-to-day firefighting. You kind of get things done. Is there room to kind of look ahead and really kind of blue sky, thinking if you use a cliche?
Well, the way we're structured right now is we actually have a planning team, and we've got a purchasing team and an operations team. So the operations team is really doing the day-to-day, firefighting, if you will. And our planning team is focused on looking out in the future and saying, what could tomorrow be like? And so, to me, it's always good to look at, wild ideas, because at some point there will be application. And it may not be the complete application, but you may use a portion of it. So, I think the way we're structured right now allows a group of folks in our organization to actually, not have to worry about, fighting a fire today, but actually looking into the future.
Yeah, we're structured much the same way. We've got planning, sourcing, and operations, and the planning team. Our planning team is doing a lot of forward-looking stuff, and within the supply chain group, which includes more than just the finished vehicles and parts and materials, but our whole supply chain group, we launched an innovation support team. It's really just it's a group of advisors that helps folks on the floor, the 400 folks in supply chain that have great ideas that don't know how to bubble them up. So we created an environment that allows them to bring ideas forward, have advisors and mentors work with them to kind of build it into some sort of elevator pitch, and we regularly kind of churn through those things. So we've identified an awful lot of blue sky stuff, and we certainly encourage it, not just from the silos that are responsible for it, but everyone else. And if I look at the portfolio of things that we're working on internally, related to connected vehicle, but related to other technologies as well too, I'm pretty excited about what the next 18, 24 months looks like for us. So, yeah.
Okay, on the subject of blue skies, sustainability. That's barely been touched in the conference. So I just wondered how important green logistics sustainability was within your agenda. Is it something that's really important? If it is, how are you encouraging it within your teams and amongst your suppliers?
Sustainability is included in FCA's global annual report. There's a huge section on sustainability. Logistics is a component of that sustainability specifically. So we do take it very seriously, particularly as we operate 2 private fleets, both on the inbound side and on the outbound side. The inbound private fleet, we've converted completely to CNG, compressed natural gas, and it's the largest private natural gas fleet in the Midwest. And as part of our RFQs, as we go out, we do request a sustainability factor or ideas for sustainability, and we do take that into account when we're making the commercial decisions. Is it weighted as heavy as other things? Probably not, but we're doing better in terms of taking taking it into account than we were maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I think there's a real desire to have interesting opportunities for sustainability, and knowing that it's an evolutionary scale, particularly in the finished vehicle side. But we were talking about it in Dave's committee think tank earlier about connected vehicle and autonomous vehicles, and we really don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. I mean, when it comes to the connected autonomous vehicle technology that's going to go not just in electric vehicles and hybrids, but in gas vehicles and the whole fleets at some point. One, we don't know how quick it's going to be. I think it's going to be quicker than we can all imagine. And two, when we get to that point, I think green and sustainability opportunities go through the roof. I think in terms of when the cars are idling, when the cars are running, the amount of fuel that's used in the yards, I think there's some really great opportunities there to make a giant leap forward in our industry's piece of sustainability and how we support it at the product level. So.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely important. And one of the things that we look at is, if we can optimize the network and reduce miles, you get an automatic benefit of having an improved network, but being more sustainable and green as well. So, a really good example of being a win-win, if you can optimize the network, take miles out, eliminate that waste, and get a win all the way around. So that's our focus.
I think as an organization, I'd say the biggest impact we've had on the green is to update the vessels. We're operating the ro-ro ships throughout the world, and I know there's been a lot of investment on that side to bring out the latest technology in vessels and retire some of those older ones that we're not doing as well. So
We rely on our vendors to do a great job in sustainability.
Maybe I can turn a little bit to Mexico again. And maybe you can start a little with Glenn, just because there's tonight, in fact. Is
ask me tomorrow.
It's pretty timely, yeah. Well, okay, then not about tonight, but about how we got to this point. Obviously, it's a new plant in Mexico for Kia. Obviously, you're Glovis America, so your responsibilities, I imagine, are mainly in the U.S., or let's say supporting the U.S. But obviously, you have the experience in the region, your team and organization, and across Kia and Hyundai in the U.S. So, how involved have you been in the planning and the processes in establishing, the network that's going to be used, and otherwise? Yeah.
So the network coming into the States, we've been fully involved. That was under our control. The domestic inter-Mexico shipments is a different Glovis that's handling that. But I was lucky enough to have some individuals that work for me, Art Lim, who had quite a bit of experience coming from Nissan. I was able, even though he retired, to keep him on as a consultant to see this project through. And I also had just some expertise in-house that was able to definitely help us with that. And also, we're a latecomer into that market, so I was able to speak to others in the industry that have gone through it. Dennis Manns told me a lot of horror stories that I was able to learn from, hopefully learn from. I don't know for sure yet.
Is that
but
a horror story?
Don't worry. And so, we're hoping that the location of our facility is going to provide some benefits. We're one of the more northern locations. Assuming we don't have any customs clearance issues at the border, we expect for our vehicles to leave the plant by rail and cross the border hours later without stopping. And if that happens, we're pretty optimistic that we're not going to see any of the damage issues that some others have seen. One of our goals is to, ship them out as soon as possible. Some are going out by ocean, and there's going to be a combination of truck and rail taking those over to the ocean port. So.
And obviously for Marc and Bryan, there's an expansion in Mexico, or at least some change. GM is, I think, planning doubling production over the next couple of years. For example, one thing, I was just there and talking to some of the guys that are going into San Luis Potosí, for example, and I think there's already some labor shortages that GM faces. This is on the plant side, but perhaps it also affects the yard. And now 2 more OEMs going to go in next door. So I mean, just from that point of view, are you working with your teams down there to encourage training and build stronger, kind of skill sets in the logistics area?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, that is going to be a real issue where you've got, all of a sudden a bunch of volume or plants coming into one area, and it's going to be competing for those resources. So it's definitely something we're working with the HR to really say, okay, how do we make sure we can retain these folks and attract the right ones? So there's a lot of work going on in that space right now.
That's some things that we don't think of here in the States. I mean, we don't have this issue. We don't have any competing plants near us. But I've heard stories about providing a lunch or a breakfast or transportation to and from work is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And it's, at the factories here in the U.S., we've never even considered those things. So, it's different.
Okay, again, looking out, see if there's any questions, because we're very happy to pick on people. For example, and I'm going for easy targets here. But a couple of people have recently gone from car makers to logistics service providers. And I was just wondering what they've learned from the change, what they would do. Have they learned anything that they would do differently if they were back at the OEM, apart from give all the business to their current companies? What would they do differently? So the two I'm particularly thinking of are Brian Mason and Dennis, Dennis someone or other. So they're both in this corner over this side, so I don't know who wants to take it first.
I think now that when I was at Toyota, I was way too easy on my port processors. I was way too easy on my third-party logistics providers. But no, it's really different seeing a different view of the world, and also getting up in the morning and not trying to keep one OEM happy, but keeping 13 OEMs happy in one place, and trying to do it so that all of them think that they're your only customer. And because that's really what we try to do at the end of the day, is we want everyone to feel like they're our only customer. But that is a challenge. I think it's given me an appreciation for space. My wife notices as I drive around, I'm constantly looking at anything that looks more than 4 or 5 acres that's paved and lit. I suddenly swerve off the road and jot down a number or something if there's a sign on it. But that's my observations. But I really have, a lot of my customers are up on the stage right now. I really have enjoyed working with these gentlemen. It's a very small world in logistics, and I appreciate the support that they've given us at Pasha, and we enjoy being their provider. So thank you.
And the old guy in the back.
The old guy in the back.
Mercy sakes.
Yeah.
They, I don't know. When I was wearing my Honda hat, I'm looking at Louis here. We always, and Marc Allen's been a good friend for a long time. We didn't hire vendors. We hired partners. That's kind of how we looked at it. It's a small. I always call it a fraternity. Of this group here, and it's a small world. There's only so many railroads, so many processors, car haulers. That kind of deal, and the Hondas of the world and the GMs and et cetera, are large enough that, to be honest, you need a blanket of all these guys to make your thing work. And, we always tried to relationship the thing when we had issues, and you're always going to have issues with the complexity of this thing. And so, we always tried to look at both sides of the fence to work out our issues. So now that I'm on the other side, to be honest, we're really lucky. The vendors that we have or the customers that we have, it's a good partnership. It really is. And so we're pretty lucky from that aspect. But, we've always taken the time to kind of look at the other guy's position. So that hasn't changed really a whole lot. So. That's enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talking on the port side again a little bit, Bryan, I think at the end of last year, GM started using a port in the Gulf, right? I think Freeport, right? And Marc, earlier this year we talked about FCA kind of maybe considering some options and things. So I wanted just to throw that out there and how you see this region developing for GM in terms of another port area, whether for exports or maybe in future for imports and other areas. Is this like the next kind of coast, if you like? For
Yeah, it really was for us, and it was driven by basically saying, how can we make the network more efficient and take care of our customer better? And so again, I think it opened up an opportunity where all of our providers that support us there were able to win, and we were able to win as well. So again, to me, anytime you can, find a new opportunity and everybody can win, it's a great thing. So it just makes the relationship stronger, and it helps everyone's financials. So it's worked out very well for us, and we're very pleased with it.
I agree wholeheartedly. We have anchor ports on the East Coast and in Baltimore, anchor ports in San Diego on the West Coast, and the Gulf Coast is interesting to us for a variety of reasons, not just for short sea, but also for product coming from EMEA in our case, and we're looking at it this summer. We're looking at it right now. We're trying to develop our strategy so that we have eventually have an anchor port in the Gulf, an anchor port on both coasts, and 2 in Canada, and a variety in Mexico as well. So it's definitely part of our strategy.
And for Glenn and Gerry, I mean, whether it's for Gulf or not, I mean, have you added any additional locations, perhaps especially with Mexico, or are you using the same network, or you're looking at other areas?
I think we're always studying that part of our network, the capacity at the ocean ports. We have recently added a port in Northern California. We continue to study ports on the East Coast. West Coast is just pretty difficult to find any additional capacity. Gulf Coast, we've looked at some, just haven't really figured out a way to fit it into our network at this time. Something that we continue to keep our eye on. With the factory in Mexico coming online, might change that a little bit. So.
We added Brunswick, Georgia a few years ago, but we're pretty good right now for our import volume.
Okay. Just taking a look back a little bit, I was just wondering, what are you most proud of in the past year? What have you done, changed in the past year, ideally to do with vehicle logistics, that you're most proud of in the past 12 months? There must be something.
I'm most proud that I didn't screw up the team that I inherited when I came back to FCA. I mean, I was extremely fortunate to have the team that I have and the work that they've been doing up to the point that I came in, and I hope that I gave them some additional perspective, and we certainly focused a lot more on collaboration, and I'm proud of the work I've done with the other OEMs, but yeah, I was fortunate with the folks that I have on my team at FCA, and I'm extremely happy with the work that we're doing collectively and with the other OEMs. I think we've moved the needle this year. So.
Yeah, I would say that one rings true for me too. When you went through the rail crisis, it's really easy to start doing a lot of finger pointing. But I think the OEs in general, as a collective group, said we want to be part of the solution, and so that's. I chair the ALICE committee that works with MPEC, and we're really, to me, working in the true spirit of, hey, we're all connected, we're all one network at the end of the day, and what any one of us do impacts each other. So let's work together and make it better.
And I think for our organization, just the flexibility we had because our network went through such an extreme change from, velocity, trying to get cars faster, to now trying to find space to store cars. So we had a major change in our supply chain.
We added a big improvement to our dealer trading capability so they can trade pipeline. And for a customer that's interested in ordering a sold order, they can look deeper into our supply chain.
I know, I appreciate your organizations are all slightly different and your roles are slightly different, but kind of on that point, how often do you in your position or in your team talk to dealers, to kind of communicate with them, and just to, even if it's just to get a sense for what they want or what they kind of want to see differently from the delivery? Is that kind of at a remove because it's in the wholesale, or do you have those dialogues?
Well, we actually have a lot of integration with order fulfillment, and so that's our primary point of contact, with the field. But I would say, like with the haulaway providers, we've reached out to them and said, hey, where you've got dealers where you want 24/7 or extended delivery hours, please let us know, and then we'll collaborate with the sales group and the dealer and work with you to increase flexibility. So again, it's our primary route is through order fulfillment, but in that example, we're going direct to dealers, with the carriers as well.
We sit side by side with our commercial operations group, and they're responsible for the ordering and allocation process. So they're close to the dealers, and we as logistics have a quarterly voice of the customer program that myself or someone from my team will go out and interview 2 or 3 dealers, depending on the region, and what information or feedback we get back from the National Dealer Council meetings that we have regularly. And we pick up all kinds of interesting information, things they like, things they don't like. We really benefit also from having Rubicon in the field. Rubicon does a fantastic job coordinating information flows and dealing with issues between our business centers and our dealers and our carriers and our ramps. So they're a fantastic extension of the work that we do. So, yeah.
Can you give us an example of something that you might have changed because of these meetings?
Well, frankly, a lot of the things that we find is how do we, not to get technical about it, but it's not so much the transportation piece as much as the claims management piece. The availability of data, being able to go show dealers that are within 3 miles of each other serviced from the same ramp, having wildly different damage claim. So it just highlights opportunities of waste, whether it's at the dealer side, our side, or the carrier side. And for all the things that we do find operationally that we can fix, we find an equal amount of opportunities to defend our carriers when it comes to the dealer relationships. And I think that's really important. So,
our direct dealer contact is pretty minimal. There are certain people in our organization that talk to them on a regular basis, but there was a time when we were playing a part in the dealer council meetings, but that was during some tough times in our industry, when the rail issues were occurring. So it's really the interaction depends upon whether or not there are issues. If there are no issues, then they don't want to hear about logistics. So that's sort of the mode we're in right now. Hyundai is having their national dealer meeting next week, and we're invited to that. So we go there, and people see our badge and come up and may have a couple of comments about something that goes on at their dealership. It's a good time to hear what's happening at that level to see what's going on. So.
Yeah, our regional distribution people are not shy about letting us know where the pinch points are, and we also have quarterly meetings with the dealer advisory board, so they're not shy.
Just again, going backwards and saying what have you done in the last year? A little bit, well, maybe perhaps a bit more forward-looking is we've touched a little bit about the technologies that are coming in. I think the most recent one I heard was from Mary Barra when she called me and said, "Hey, Lou." But no, I saw something that the car industry is going to change in the next 10 years more than it's changed in the last 100. So 2 questions based around that is, what do you think will have the most impact on vehicle logistics? Will it be autonomous cars or whatever it will be that will make the biggest impact, or Uberization or whatever the technology, or what the word is? And secondly, following from that, who do you think, or from where will your successor come? Or maybe not direct successor, 5 years, 10 years time. Will it be a logistician, a supply chain guy, a marketing guy, a tech wizard, some 18-year-old hacking expert from California or whatever they're from? Who will be the head of finished vehicle logistics at Chrysler, General Motors, Apple, or whatever you're going to be called in for 10 years' time?
It's a broad question. So you had 3 questions. What was the first one was technology?
Which of the changes in the automotive industry that will most impact finished vehicle logistics?
I firmly believe telematics. We don't know what we don't know. And the example we used earlier was when the iPhone came out in 2007, it played music, it made phone calls, and you searched the web, and that was amazing. And then if you asked somebody in 2007 to say what it's going to look like in 5 years, they would have been wildly wrong with how fast it progressed. So we've got a lot of great insight into what these connected vehicles are going to do for us as it relates to our consumers. We're scratching the surface on what we think it can do in the interim pieces where we're delivering the vehicles and how that can help our network. But I think there's a lot of applications in the next 5 years that we're going to get very, very good at understanding and leveraging, and I think it's going to be a game changer for this industry.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And we're actually working with the OnStar Development Factory on different ways to leverage it. But what we're running into, just to be candid, is there's so many opportunities, with revenue generation and other areas of the company, and it's really competing internally to get the focus on logistics. So I think that's definitely going to be the game changer.
So I'm curious, have any of your organizations come to you to ask you what you'd like to see when the vehicle ignition's turned off?
Yes.
Have they?
I take that
That's
back.
good.
We went to them.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And it was eye-opening for them. That's my personal experience with our Uconnect team.
Do they think they could do it with the key turned off? Provide data?
Yeah, I'm not ready to talk about what we can or can't do. all I can tell you is that I'm extremely excited about the things that we're talking about and the things that we think we can do and how low the barriers are. And I think GM's got an advantage over everybody with OnStar and how you use the OnStar subscription relationship versus how maybe we use Uconnect and Sirius and other things. But I think when we come to an idea of what has to be standardized in order for us to take advantage of it for the outbound distribution piece, once that happens, I think it opens up. There's an awful lot of opportunities there. And again, I think these are just the phone call, music, and internet piece of it. I think there's other things that we just don't know yet. And as that starts happening, it's going to come fast and furious, I think.
I keep hearing the engineers talk about battery draw. That's their big issue, is they don't want a vehicle to arrive at its destination and be dead. So
there's a solution to that. We figured it out with the engineers this year. So.
I mean, I would have to just observe that if anyone was going back and watching maybe the video of this session last year or even in Detroit, I think the enthusiasm around this has actually changed. I mean, obviously some things that have changed quickly or that have come across. The last couple of times we've kind of asked these questions, not necessarily from all of you guys, but generally I think it's been a bit more like, well, yeah, maybe that's not the most important thing, or not that it's the most important thing tomorrow or as in today. But I think that's very interesting that these developments are kind of happening. And I talked a lot with BMW in Germany, and they, sitting next to their research and development, had started to work together and to work on some of those points. And it was also, as they kind of said, quite eye-opening to kind of give those guys a chance to think about logistics, which they normally wouldn't do. So I think that probably kind of draws the line under, or rather highlights the importance of the cross-organizational aspects.
I think the change in the last year, at least what I've noticed, was, and we still have these discussions with engineers. You'll say, well, I need this to do this, and they'll say, well, what can you save, or what can you, and you'll give them a number, and they'll go, wow, it's going to cost 100 times that to outfit every vehicle, right? So we're still sitting, a lot of times, and I would say last year it was more prevalent, was they're sitting in this idea that whatever it costs to facilitate the units to do this is too much, and we're just going to slow walk it like we would do other types of technologies, right? I really believe in the last year, and I've seen it with our Uconnect team, is they're actually turning around and seeing this is a tsunami. And no different than having to invest in airbags by regulation 20 years ago, 30 years ago. the demand for the connected vehicle is coming, and it's not just going to be for our top line Grand Cherokees, or it's not going to be for our top line vehicles. It's going to be, power windows in a Dodge Dart. Like that's going to be expected, and I think that's where you're seeing a lot more thought leadership coming out in the last year. My opinion, and I just think that's going to get faster and faster. So the pace is going to pick up pretty quickly, because I think you guys and Ford both said that you think your fleets are going to be enabled or OnStar enabled by like 2018, right? 2019, somewhere in that range. That's fast, So it's coming. So regardless of what the cost to do it, if you're going to compete in this industry and be able to provide this, we're all going to have to figure that out. And I'm excited about it only because I want to be prepared to take advantage of the deployed technology, because we've already done the homework to say this is how we'd benefit in. So regardless of what I save, it helps everybody's business case, regardless of what percentage that is. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Sort of an interesting thing, maybe for us as trying to be relatively global as an organization, sometimes you should look to other regions too, because regulations drive things. So actually, of all places, Russia might be interesting in this, because there's been a Ford engineer who's been telling Louis and I for years to look at this, because there's a GLONASS, there's a sort of the Russian GPS, where they're mandating it in every car basically by, I think, even this year or something like that. So they've already been looking at, okay, how can we use this? Because we have to have it. And in the EU also has a regulation. It's safety related, but it's basically a kind of telematics that's got to be in every car by 17 or 18. So, sometimes some regulation will drive some of this change as well. Mm-hmm. So just maybe that's a sideways plug to think about some of our other conferences around the world as well. Any points from the audience? You guys have been a bit quiet today, but good. Right in the front.
Mike Fozzier from Subaru, work with Gerry and his team at the Richmond Port in California. Following up on the connected car and the telematics and that kind of stuff, what kind of dedication are you guys going to be putting towards security for the vehicles? We recently saw that Mitsubishi had an issue with a vehicle in Europe. They were able to hack into the vehicle, disable the alarm, disable that kind of stuff. Is that a concern for the U.S. market?
It was a concern for us last year publicly, clearly. Yeah. But our engineers and our cybersecurity group has done a great job locking it down. In fact, it's a bit of a hindrance for us to develop some of the connected car requirements that we need on the logistics side, because we have to develop these apps that go into the module in order to do the things we want them to do while they're in transit mode. And the hurdles to get through the development process and the testing of the actual apps itself rather than the information that's flowing, that's a very high hurdle now after what happened last year for us. And I think that was a wake-up call for every manufacturer, and I'm relatively secure that everybody is taking that extremely, extremely seriously. So.
Did we have another hand up at the same time? No. Your last question, Louis?
No. It's unfortunate because I'm sitting next to Glenn and Gerry, and it's kind of making me want an ice cream. So on that high note, perhaps we can finish this session. So firstly, I'd like to thank the panel for a very honest and great final discussion. Thank you very much. They wouldn't let me carry the mic to the podium because in Atlanta, when they gave me a handheld mic, I decided to turn gangster and dropped the mic. So I'm sorry for everyone who was deafened in Atlanta when that happened. It's unfortunate. First of all, I'd like to remind you about the evaluation forms. They're very important to us and hopefully to you. We really take those forms seriously. When we have our meetings back in the office, we really go through everyone, and I'm particularly scrutinized on any comments, advice, criticism. We take them very seriously. So please take the time to complete the evaluation form. And there is a prize draw, so if you can, I don't know, you're too young to remember Chamberlain in World War II, but if you can wave the white paper in the air or something like that. You remember, Dennis? There is a draw as well, and I better make sure I got it right, because apparently I got it rudely wrong. It's a 4-ball round of golf at Oak Creek, complimentary, and it's valid for a year. So, perhaps you could, even if you don't use it now, next year when you come over to Finished Vehicle Logistics, maybe you can grab a quick game then, and a box of the Queen's favourite fudge. Well, that's a bit unfair, because I should say it used to be the Queen's favourite fudge when she had teeth.
Nice.
And just so you know, I've immigrated to the United States, so I can say jokes like that. Yeah. But I hope you've enjoyed the couple of days. I've got to say you were very well behaved. We normally have a great show of the photos that we've collected over the last couple of days. Whether it was people being thrown into swimming pools, our head of sales, Gavin, with his face covered in s'mores from last year, laser beams being pointed at my head very disrespectfully a couple of years ago, the young ladies mooning from the boat on our second year. We have got actually people mooning from the boat this year, but guys, that was very unfortunate. Don't do that again. Have we got we'll do a quick draw for the evaluation forms. Dan Tedford from the Pacer Group. Is Dan here? Dan.
First time I tell you to come to the conference, and you'll win. Bryan.
I'm going to say, I'm going to
be back down next week.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not as good a conference as he would like it to be, because I know he was trying to get some young lady's telephone number on his mobile phone earlier today. But no, that's not fair. She was actually asking him, so yeah. So I hope you enjoyed the 2 days. The Finished Vehicle Logistics industries, perhaps more, in my mind, it's in a more optimistic stage. I've been a big critic of vehicle logistics. I don't think there's enough innovation. I'm not sure that we thought forward-looking enough over the past 10 years, but I'm really beginning to see that sea change. I'm really glad to see. I suppose a lot of it's down to the fat cow kind of scenario. And don't look at me like that every time I say that. But I think the positivity, which means people can invest. But, as I said at the beginning of the conference, often the new ideas come through when times are tough. I'm pleased to see that new ideas are coming through now, that innovation's coming through, whether it is CTM and Bill Pollock, whether it's the ideas that Steve Tripp said, whether it's ePod from a couple of years ago, beginning to see more new ideas being taken on board, looking for ideas, looking at how technology can support us. So it's good to see that vehicle logistics is now very much a forward-looking industry. I look forward to some of these changes taking place a little bit more quickly. But it's good to see that that's happening. We love being at this crowd here in California. This year was great the way you interacted, apart from the final session. But I think you interacted greatly, asking lots of questions, making lots of comments. The buzz that we hear in the dinners and the gala dinner and the cocktail receptions is always great to see. I hope that you're all, taking advantage of the networking, that you're really meeting new people, catching up with old friends. We know that you have, it's great. We really encourage everybody to have a lot of fun here. But it is a business meeting. And I think that this is one of the best examples of how business can be fun as well. We're here. You're all here to do business, despite what I say. You're all great professionals. But why not have a bit of fun while you're doing the business as well? So we're really, it's really great to be here. If you enjoy our conferences, perhaps a couple that I'll focus on firstly. The next North America conference is in Baltimore, our Import-Export North America conference in Baltimore in August. Please come along to that. It is by its very nature, the title, a particular focus on imports and exports, but it is another gathering of the finished vehicle logistics community. So please join us for that. In September 20th to the 22nd, is Automotive Logistics Global, the original Automotive Logistics Conference in Detroit, where everybody, the whole industry comes together, including production, service, parts, manufacturing, purchasing, but very much still finished vehicle logistics. And we're working very hard this year to make sure, I hope for the right reasons, it's not going to be a carbon copy of finished vehicle logistics here. We're changing it to make sure that it's something that's going to be different, very relevant, very important for the finished vehicle logistics industry, but it won't just be covering the same issues over and over again. We're going to be looking at completely different. And in January 2017 will be Automotive Logistics Mexico. A very successful launch for us, the way that it's been accepted so well in the automotive industry and the great support that we've had from Mexico, the Mexican government, the Mexican associations, and the Mexican car makers has been, amazing for us, and that's turned into, one of our top conferences, so quickly. So hopefully, we've heard over the last couple of days how important Mexico is. So hopefully you'll join us there as well. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, our premier sponsor of finished vehicle logistics North America, Jack Cooper. And I was very proud that they honored me last night with a kind of a token of appreciation for what I, namely, but the whole automotive logistics or finished vehicle logistics team do for the industry. Our gold sponsors, Accelerated, Confezioni Andrea, ICL, JMN, KHS, Metrogistics, Montway, Tech, and Voith. Our global sponsors, Changju Logistics, CDC, CTM, and Wallenius Wilhelmsen Logistics. Our silver sponsors, A&E, Crown, Hyundai, Glovis, Inform, Nationwide. So I can't even read that one. Proact, Road and Rail Services. So I'll get back to that one as well. Road and Rail Services, United Road, United States Auto Logistics, and the very special Vascor, and the very special sponsor who I left out there was Pat Group and Masney, also silver sponsors of our conference. Thank you very much for your support. They do sponsor the conference because they offer services, products, knowledge, especially for your industry. So if you haven't had a chance to visit their stands, you'll see their logos on our websites and on the literature that you're taking home with you. So please have a look at what they're doing. There's amongst the sponsors there's going to be stuff that's going to be really helpful and useful for all of you. But I hope you enjoyed us here. And I'm trying to work out that we're now doing 11 conferences a year. So I'm trying to look at the schedule. Where are we? I don't even know what month we're in now. June. So end of June is Automotive Logistics Russia in Moscow. August is Import-Export North America. September is Automotive Logistics Global in Detroit. October is our first UK event. So we've been doing conferences all around the world, but this is our first Automotive Logistics UK conference. November is Automotive Logistics India. December is Automotive Logistics South America in Sao Paulo in Brazil. Mexico is in January. And then in March is Automotive Logistics Europe. April is Automotive Logistics China. May is our parts conference, Automotive Logistics Supply Chain in Atlanta. And then back in Newport Beach in May, June, probably June 2017 for Finished Vehicle Logistics North America. So I hope you've enjoyed the 2 days. I hope you found it valuable, beneficial for your companies, and maybe even a little bit fun. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you somewhere around the world again. Thank you. And just to finish off on a high note, if you'd like to join us, we're going to have some drinks and a few canapes and snacks outside where the equipment is. That's hosted by Tech, so you'll see the new trailers and trucks and covered vehicles, protective services for quality. So please join us outside there for a quick drink and some snacks. Thank you.